Hey, it's Dr. Jared, and these are 3 of the worst stretches for your lower back pain and what you should be doing instead. Now, there's one critical factor that as a physical therapist, I wish more people understood, and that is that not all lower back pain comes from the same source, and therefore it is not all treated the exact same way. In fact, stretches and exercises that may be great at helping one condition can actually be very painful and cause more damage in another. It's crucial that you perform the right stretches and the right exercises for your specific type of lower back pain in order to see maximum improvement. That's exactly what I want to share with you in this video today. That being said, first stretch coming at you right now. The first stretch that I recommend that you avoid is a forward bending lower back stretch. Most often you see this one standing as the person reaches down towards their toes, or seated with their legs out in front of them, and then they fold forward and reach towards their toes. Now what this does is it just puts a lot of pressure on the lower back discs. And especially if you have a bulged or herniated disc, this might feel okay in the moment, but it's actually causing more damage in the long run. What I recommend that you do instead would be more of an active range of motion into flexion and extension. The easiest way to do that is in the form of a cat-cow exercise. What I want you to do is kneel down on all fours with your hands under your shoulders and your knees under your hips. Now in this position, what we can do is arch our back up towards the ceiling, kind of tuck your pelvis underneath yourself to flatten out that lower back, and just arch the entire lower back up towards the ceiling. Hold 1, 2, 3 seconds, and then we're going to come into the opposite position. I'm going to let my stomach sag down towards the mat, let my back sag between my shoulders, and create this reverse arch in my lower back as my eyes come up towards the wall in front of me, just until I get a good stretch throughout that entire spine, and then return back down to that first position. So this would be like the angry cat right here, and then this would be the cow, or sometimes you hear it referred to as the camel position right here. Spend about 5 seconds in each one of those and repeat that about 10 times. Again, this is one of my favorite ways to just work some active range of motion in throughout your spine. The second exercise that I recommend that you should avoid is aggressive extension into your end range of motion. Now, most often you see this in lower back stretching videos in the form of a cobra pose or a king cobra pose, where you're down on your stomach, your hips are on the ground, and your arms are fully extended, creating this big aggressive extension motion in your lower back. Now, the caveat to this is I actually don't mind this exercise in the case of a bulged disc, but there are certain steps that need to take place to get us all the way up into that end range of motion. I can explain that in just 1 second. The point that I want to make is that if you have any other condition, a degenerative disc disease, a stenosis, or an arthritis, I absolutely would not recommend this exercise for you, as it puts a ton of pressure on those posterior elements in your back, which can just create more pain. And so I need to show you 2 different stretches here. If you have a bulge disc, again, I don't mind getting into some extension, we just need to get there slowly. If you have a degenerative or arthritic or stenosis disc, we need to do things a little bit different. So let's first start with the bulge disc condition. What I would recommend for you there is to go slowly with this, with the understanding we don't need to push all the way up into that aggressive end range immediately. That should be something that we gradually work towards. And so what I would recommend is we start right here with my elbows under my shoulders, and then we press up as high as we can go, just like this. Depending on how severe your back pain is and depending on how lit up that disc might be, this might be a very good stretch for you to start with. We'd hold this for about 10 seconds and then come right back down, and then just work slowly higher and higher with that. You can get to the point where you start these gentle press-ups with your arms, and then we work higher and higher. That would be where I would start with a bulged or herniated disc. Now, if you have stenosis or arthritis, again, absolutely, I would not recommend that exercise for you. What we need to do instead are some flexion stretches for your lower back. The simplest way to do that would be laying on your back. I'm going to bend one knee up here into my chest. I'm going to grab that knee and pull it up towards my chest until I get a good stretch through the back of my hip and up into my lower back. I would hold that for 20 seconds and repeat it 3 times. If that feels okay, we can actually do that with both knees. So now I'm going to grab both of my knees, pull it up towards my chest, and you'll see that that rotates my pelvis a little bit more. It creates more of a stretch into your lower back. Hold it for 20 seconds and then repeat that one 3 times. Finally, number 3 on my list of the worst stretches for your lower back pain is actually any stretch for your lower back when that's not actually the issue. Now hear me out on this. Your back should actually be very stable and it should be very supported by all of the muscles that are acting on it. In contrast, your hips should actually be very mobile. In fact, it's your second most mobile joint in your body. If your hips are not mobile enough to perform all their proper function, that mobility has to be compensated for up in the lower back. And a lot of times this can manifest itself as lower back pain. So if your hips aren't moving as much as they should be, your back has to compensate, and that's what causes pain in your lower back. If all we ever do is stretch out your lower back, that's just treating the symptoms. Basically, that's trying to put out the fire by spraying the smoke. What we need to do is get to the cause of your pain, or in this case, in this analogy, the flames behind the fire, which is the immobility or the limited motion in your hips. And I've got 3 quick exercises that I want to show you to improve hip mobility that will then decrease the demand on your lower back. The 2 motions that people are always tight in are going to be rotation and then hip extension. So those are the stretches that I want to show you. For the rotation stretches, let's start with some internal rotation stretches. Super easy. You're going to lay down on your back with your knees spread out wide and your feet spread out wide. Now in this position, all I want to do is I'm going to drop this right knee down towards my left foot until I get a good stretch right here through kind of the front top part of my right hip. I'm going to hold that for about 5 seconds, and then I'm going to repeat that over here on the left side. So let that left knee drop in until we get a good stretch up on the top. Hold that for about 5 seconds, and then we're just going to repeat that both ways to hopefully open up that hip rotation motion a little bit. I then like to follow that up with a hip external rotation stretch or a piriformis stretch. What you're going to do is lay in that same position on your back with your knees bent, cross one foot over your other knee. So I've got my left foot crossed over my right knee. Now with my hands, I'm going to grab right behind my knee until I get just a good, comfortable stretch right here through my deep left hip. Now, if you have lower back pain, 9 times out of 10, this is going to be really tight on you. This is going to be something that you're going to have to gradually work towards. And so try to keep it as comfortable as possible. Remember, consistency greater than intensity, and just be consistent with it. You're going to hold this for 20 seconds. I like to alternate over to the other side, hold that for 20 seconds, and then repeat those 3 times. Then the last area of the hips that always gets tight with lower back pain is going to be the hip flexors. And especially if you spend a lot of time sitting, these hip flexors can pull on your lower back and cause pain. So the hip flexor stretch that I like to get out of that tightness is going to be a tall kneeling hip flexor stretch. We get into this tall kneeling position. If I'm going to stretch my right side out, what I want to do is bring my left foot forward so I'm in this nice tall kneel position. In this position, I want to fire my right glute, so contract that right glute muscle to keep the hip in the right place, and then just shift my weight forward as far as possible onto that left foot until I just get a good, comfortable stretch right here through the front of my hip and through my hip flexor. Now with this one, it's important. I don't want you to fold forward like this. You're not going to feel anything if you do that. Maintain an upright posture. Keep in mind that we're basically trying to separate right here kind of the front of the hip, the front of the torso from the front of the hip until we just get a good stretch all through that hip flexor muscle, that iliopsoas muscle. And so what you're going to do is hold that in a comfortable stretch position for 20 seconds and repeat that 3 times on the right, and then repeat that also 3 times on the left. Now, if you're interested in the 3 worst core exercises for your lower back pain and what you should be doing instead, you can watch that video right here. For some reason, YouTube thinks you might like this video, so check that one out. If you haven't subscribed to Tone and Tighten yet, hit the circle right here to do that. And I hope to see you back here again soon on Tone and Tighten.